So I went in the next Monday at 8 a.m. and just sat my manager down and was just like, yeah, I gotta go for this. I'll definitely like regret it later on in life if I don't. And so I just quit. And then
Welcome back to Young Smart Money. My name's Crider, and I'm your host. So a lot of us have heard about using credit cards in order to travel for free, or at least very, very reduced rates. And today I sort of wanted to break down exactly how that works. So we've got a guest, very special guest, who knows a lot about this topic. It hits home for him. His name is Jeff Sekinger, and he has scored some serious travel deals and flown places for free that I could not even imagine that he's going to get all into in this episode. He's also going to talk about how he got started entrepreneurially, how he built an Amazon business from scratch and started scaling up. We've got a ton to cover in this episode. And before we do, if you've gotten some value out of Young Smart Money and it's helped you on your journey, please do consider leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. It really does help us reach more people with the show, and it helps you hear from even more amazing guests. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show. Jeff, welcome to Young Smart Money. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
I am doing just fantastic. So for those of our listeners that aren't familiar with who you are and what you do, could you give a brief sort of overview on what you're up to right now? And then we're going to dive more into specifics from there.
Yeah, man. So I do quite a few things. First of all, I run a digital marketing agency, and we have a few different niches that we specialize in. We have a few employees as well, but we focus on real estate and healthcare providers. So like doctors, dentists, chiropractors. And then we're really getting into the real estate niche, which is where we're going to specialize in. I'm also a financial consultant for entrepreneurs. And where I've started recently and where I've been really focusing is credit. And so I focus like on personal credit and then business credit. And I just teach them how to leverage credit correctly to scale their business and to scale their lifestyle. So that's really what I focus on a lot is the credit aspect of finance.
Awesome. And I mean, I'm super interested in credit. That's where I really got started with my YouTube channel. It was just making videos on different credit cards and different strategies that people could use to start building their credit at a young age. And it sounds like you've got your feet in a lot of different places right now between your stuff with credit, between your stuff with social media. So I'm really excited to get into it. So first off, where did you sort of get started with entrepreneurship? Can you talk a little bit about your experience with entrepreneurship at a young age?
Yeah, man. So it started really young. I did the whole lemonade stand thing when I was really young, and then went into like baseball cards. And then, I would like clean my parents' houses I'd clean like baseboards for like 25 cents, like a room. And then, so I was always like trying to find ways to make money. And then in high school, I managed a landscaping company.
Really?
With like 4 of my buddies. And, we'd put like flyers out to the neighborhoods around us, and we did pretty well. From there, I went into college, and while in high school, I held a job that whole time. I actually worked at an Italian restaurant, and I played 3 sports and like football, lacrosse, and basketball.
Wow.
So I was really busy. And then like in the summer was when we ran that landscaping company.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went into college and really kind of focused on school the first couple of years. And I went, to get my finance degree, minor in economics and international business.
Wow.
And from there, I ran a few e-com stores, mostly on Amazon. So what we would do is we would go to outlet malls.
Okay.
There was like 3 around us, like within like a 2-hour radius.
Okay.
And we go buy discount shoes. And we get those shoes like Adidas and Converse and different brands, and we would sell them on Amazon and make that margin. And it was actually very profitable. It's gotten a lot more competitive recently.
Yeah.
And then once it started to get a little bit more competitive towards the end of my college career, I kind of built a relationship with vendors that use Patagonia. I started selling Patagonia merchandise, and that did really well, especially like this time of year where,
I bet.
October, November, December. Yeah, so that did really well. And then after that, I kind of jumped into my career, which I don't know if you want me to touch on, but those were most of my entrepreneurial ventures from there.
Sure.
One thing I didn't mention was, so when I was in my junior year in college, I went abroad to Sydney, Australia.
Wow.
And I worked for this consulting firm, and they did tax for personal and business. And then they also had like wrote business plans. It was like pretty much a holistic consulting firm. They did wealth management as well. So I learned a little bit about like wealth management because I knew like that was the area I wanted to get into, but they had me doing a lot of the tax and business plan writing.
Okay.
And so I learned how to like write business plans for startups. I was just like working on like the small like startups, mostly international startups. And then I came home and I was like, I might as well use this skill that I just acquired to make money. So then I started like after the whole Amazon thing ended, I started writing business plans for startups, and it was really just like a referral basis. But that was like my real like first real business where, I was making like good money, and it was project based instead of like just selling little items for margins. So yeah, that's pretty much been my entrepreneurial journey up until graduating. And then, I got a job. I don't know if you want me to touch on that.
Yeah, sure. Where'd you get a job at?
Yeah. So, went through a pretty extensive interview process with a lot of big banks.
Yep.
My senior year, first of all, I had internships with like Fifth Third's private bank, and then Forrester's Financial, a few other ones. And then I went to, right when I graduated, I went and got a job with JP Morgan up in Columbus, Ohio. I actually worked in the biggest corporate office in the United States behind the Pentagon. So it's literally like 2 million square feet and like there's 12,000 people there. So
unreal.
Pretty ridiculous. But yeah, I was in an operations position, and like my whole career, I knew I wanted to get into finance and wealth management because that's just, at an early age, my dad got us thinking about investing. Like at 16, he made a competition between me and my sisters where like we got to pick different stocks. I think we all got like $1,000 budget, and we got to pick these stocks, and like whoever did the best at the end of the year would get more money to put in their account. And like we just let those like grow over time. We haven't touched them, but that's like what got me interested in it. So I knew I wanted to get into finance, and I got this job with this, in operations, and it was a step below the private bank. So it's still like private wealth. Like our minimum client had to have, 250K with us. And I learned a lot about like portfolio management. I was doing, making trades for them. So I was talking with the advisors and the portfolio managers and get to see how the accounts performed. And then I would, create performance reports quarterly and annually. And we move cash. We turn accounts from a single account to a joint account. We turn them into the trust. I learned a lot there. And but towards the end of it, I was just like, this corporate life is not for me. Like, I can't do this. And I'm looking at finance, especially wealth management. The fees are going down. So I'm watching the fees go down every quarter. Our fees were like shrinking.
Yep.
And then I'm talking, through my internships and like some of my mentors, they talk about the amount of time that it takes to build a real book of business. It's really like a 5-year process before you start making good money.
Wow.
And then like, I'm thinking like from 5 years from now, the fees are going to be like a lot smaller. So like, how am I, like, I don't want to settle for a couple $100,000 and like work my ass off for someone else. So I was like, at one point I was like debating quitting for a while, and I started my own company, which was part of it was, it's a consulting firm. Part of it was the business plan writing. So I still do that, but we kind of evolved into digital marketing, and that's what we're kind of specializing in now. But I declared some of that. So I declared an outside business with the firm that I was with, and they pretty much told me that I couldn't do it because I would be a competitor, because we had like a financing aspect to the consulting firm. And they pretty much like wouldn't tell me what I had to change in order to keep the business. And it came down to the point where they were just like, it's either like the business or this job. So I went in the next Monday at 8 a.m. and just sat my manager down and just like, yeah, I gotta go for this. I'll definitely like regret it later on in life if I don't. And so I just quit. And then I've been running my company since then and just started diving into credit real heavy. The funny thing was, like, when I declared that outside business activity, apparently, so I was like started personal branding a little bit before that. I declared it, and apparently they were like they watch your social media heavy.
Oh,
so I was talking about, like, I just like finance, so I just talk about finance all the time. And when I declared my outside business activity, they like sit you down in a room and like go over the information based on like your business. And they started asking me questions that were different, like they weren't relating to my business. And I was like, okay, what's going on here? And then finally she was like, started like bringing up my Instagram, and I was just like, okay, this is pretty lame. Like, she was saying like it's an investment advice, like stuff that I was talking about credit and stuff, and you can't provide investment advice depending on like the role that you have. And so yeah, I guess that was like a liability, even though investment advice, like the real definition of it is to provide like a strategy or an option for a specific person. And that's not what I was doing. I was just giving broad context into like investments and credit and stuff. So that was another thing. I was just like, all right, you know what, screw this. I can't even do what I want. So I just went in and quit, and that was it.
Man, you're making me nervous. I've got an internship coming up this summer at a large financial institution, and I'm worried about my Instagram and my YouTube stuff. So that compliance, I don't know, it might come back to bite me, but it's only going to be this summer.
Yeah, definitely let me know. Depending on like the type of job, I would, they're really starting to regulate social media because, it is a liability for them. I completely understand. But like, if the goal for you is to not work for someone, then you may have to part ways at some point.
Yeah, I know. The only reason I need an internship to graduate. That's like a graduation requirement. So I'm kind of like, just got to stick it out for a couple months, and hopefully nothing goes south.
Yeah, go for it, dude. I'm sure they won't like with interns. I don't think they will monitor you as heavy because you're not dealing with like a lot of sensitive information.
Exactly.
And, so you should be good. But that's sweet, man.
I'm hoping. So what was your major actually? Were you finance major?
Yeah, so majored in finance, and then I had 2 minors in economics and international business.
You told me that. I just spaced on that. Also, hopping back to that investment game that your parents set up for you, I actually did a very similar thing with my family probably about 8 years ago. I was very young. And they set up this portfolio. It was just me, my mom, and my stepdad. We all had this competition going. It wasn't real money. It was just kind of play money. But we all had like $1,000 of play money. And whoever won got $100 from each of the other 2. So it was sort of down the same line, but it definitely wasn't real money that we were playing with. Yeah,
it is cool to like, to actually start thinking about that type of stuff at a young age.
Yeah.
And like when you make it a competition, it brings out the ego in you and makes you want to invest a little bit more wisely.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's cool. One of the best like things with that was like my dad told us to pick companies that we actually believed in, which is what you should really do when you're investing is to
100%.
If you're picking like stocks, you need to be picking things that you really believe in and that are actually viable in the economy today.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. One of my best ones was Best Buy, which was that was like prime time retail there. So did well.
Cool. Throughout this time where you were starting your own businesses, were you pretty diligent about how you were using your money? And because you had this investing experience, were you investing it? Were you saving it? Were you spending it all? What did that look like throughout like high school and college?
Yeah. So in regards to my businesses, dude, this is what I recommend for anyone that's starting a business. I get people asking me all the time, like what type of businesses they should create. And what you really need to do, especially with your first business, is to start a business that has a low cost of entry. You don't want to be putting up a bunch of money and risking a bunch of money to start. And then you want a business with high margins. And you want a business with low overhead. So that's literally like all my businesses had pretty high margins. They had very low overhead. I literally had 0 expenses. Like I could type up a business plan on my laptop, which I already bought, which I had needed for school, and send it to the client. I can customize them on various applications on my computer. With my Amazon business, I just had to pay for gas and the like inventory, and we made 30 to 50% margins on all the
Wow.
products, even with the 17% fee we were paying to Amazon. And then with like digital marketing and stuff, dude, we make like 80% margins
Wow.
there as
Yeah.
well. So, and,
It's
and
definitely.
all those businesses, don't cost very much. So you don't need to spend a lot of money. That's like one of the biggest things. But as far as like the finance aspect of things, so for my businesses, I pay myself pretty low
Mhm.
because I'm reinvesting that into the business for more growth.
Yep.
But as far as like my personal goes, when I bring money in, I just have different accounts set up. So like when all my income comes into this account,
Mhm.
it's dispersed among different accounts, and
Mm.
each account is separate for a different aspect of area of finance, you could say. So like 10% of my income goes into this account, or all my income goes into this account, and then 10% goes into a separate account which is used for investments. So
Hmm.
I just invest 10 to 20% of my income depending on what income level I'm at, and that automatically gets invested.
And you just have that set up to automatically like take out every time you get money in.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, I find that that's like a really really good tip for people, especially people that can't budget well,
Yep.
or people that are like just starting to invest money. You need to automate it,
Hmm.
because if you're first of all, what that does is it makes you consistently invest, which is what you want to be doing. You want to be dollar cost averaging,
Absolutely.
depending on what strategy you are, if you're growth or whatnot, what age you are. But then it also takes out the emotional aspect to investing, and that's where a lot of people fall, is when they get emotional, when they see the market dropping or they see it skyrocketing. They're like, "Oh, I need to throw in more money," and then it drops, and they take out money, and then it's just that cycle
Yep.
that I'm sure you know about. And you cannot have emotions when investing whatsoever. And that's what that does. That just takes out the emotion aspect to investing, and you can just set it to automatically pull the money out of that account and invest in mutual funds.
Absolutely.
And
And there's so many ways you can automate it between like apps and just like setting it up with your bank that's like my first place that I always tell people to go when they're trying to get started investing. It's just like make it automatic, make it something you don't have to think about or worry about.
yeah,
And it's going to be so much easier for you to do. So hopping back into your entrepreneurship for a second, can you sort of talk about when you were getting started, what were some of the biggest challenges that you were faced with, maybe in your Amazon business or your landscaping business, or just going out on your own after leaving your corporate job?
yeah. So, but the thing with like in college with managing that business was just the time, because I was spending so much time like not only going to get the inventory, but having to list the inventory. Like, yeah, we use scanners to like upload it quicker.
Mhm.
And if like the product was already listed, it would get listed a lot quicker because we didn't have to put up the full listing. But I was also like, finishing out my college career. So I was spending a lot of time on school as well.
Yeah.
And the best thing that we did was we hired three other people, and that allowed that we had one person take care of inventory. We had one person actually go get the inventory, and then we had one person that kind of focused on promoting it on our campus,
Mhm.
which really increased our margins because we weren't paying that 17% fee to Amazon, and we didn't have to pay shipping. And that was awesome for my time and for the margins of the business. So that helped a lot. So that's one thing I would really recommend, is don't think that you can do everything yourself, because if you really want to scale and have a successful business, you're going to need to hire people, and you don't have to like pay them, up front. Like you can pay them by commission. That's kind of like what we're doing in our marketing agency right now. We have people prospecting for us, and they get paid a commission when they set a meeting, and then they get paid a percentage of the deal that's closed.
Mm.
So that's a good way to do it. Another big like struggle for me getting started was, like right before I quit my job, I told you I was doing some personal branding
Mhm.
on like Instagram and stuff. Um, and my parents have always thought that like like at least my parents and like family and just society really just kind of sheds light that you should go work for someone and you should like do this corporate life, and that's like the right thing to do. Because like while my dad ran a business for 17 years, he also worked for 10 years in that industry prior to starting that business. So when I quit my job, I got a lot of backlash from like family and friends about like how I'm not making the right decision, and I'm doing this too early, and I don't have enough experience and all this crap. And that was kind of tough. And then the whole personal branding thing, man, when you start putting yourself out there, you're going to get a lot of hate, especially from like old friends and stuff. You're just going to I didn't get like terrible comments, but I definitely got some, some just little annoying comments from people like, oh yeah, why don't you go post on Instagram or something like, yeah, I probably will, dude. So that was probably like the biggest struggle, especially right when I was starting.
Yeah, and it's tough to get over that at first, especially when you are putting yourself out there and making yourself so vulnerable. That's one of the biggest hurdles I feel like for people out there, that they just never get started because they fear that they're going to get some hate comments. They're going to get some people who don't particularly vibe with them. And that's just something that's going to happen. But the longer you go at it and the longer you keep going, the less you care. At least that's been my experience. Like, it's so much easier to just not even care, because like, who are they to tell you what you can and can't do? For me, it's just so much more about like what my purpose is and what drives me than what other people think about the things that I'm doing right now. So
yeah, definitely, man. And everyone has different values, so like, I value different things than, that you do. So there's no right way to go about it, but yeah, you'll definitely get that insecure feeling when you're just starting and you're getting those comments. But if you just keep pushing through, man, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah. Bouncing back, you said your dad had worked at a company for like 10 years before he went out on his own. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found a statistic a couple of days ago that really surprised me. And it was that something like 75% of people who become full-time entrepreneurs, full-time starting their own business, actually spent over 6 years working for somebody else first. So a lot of people have this image in their head of the 18-year-old who goes out, starts some billion-dollar business. But in reality, there's so many people who get started doing something else, figuring out what they like, figuring out what they're good at first, and then transitioning. So I think it's really important to not get that idea in your head of you have to get started early. You have to start your own business now, when that can be valuable and you'll definitely learn a lot, but it's not the path that even most people go down. So you don't have to pressure yourself to come up with this huge, amazing idea at the age of 18 years old. And I think that's just something that's way overemphasized.
Yeah, definitely, man. I think that it, like, if you're going into like, high school or college, it's a great idea to start a side hustle while you have the time. And then if you build that up to a point where there is a very high probability that it'll provide you enough income, then yeah, definitely go out on your own. But like, if you still want to do, like work in a job and gain experience, that's something I definitely recommend. Like I said, with my job, dude, I learned a lot from my job and my internships.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have done that any differently. So I definitely agree with what you said there.
Absolutely. And additionally, a lot of my listeners will send me DMs on Instagram asking if they should go to college. And first of all, I am not the person to ask that question to. That's really something you should be reflecting on yourself. I'm 19 years old. I am not your life coach. But moving past that, I think it's really important to establish that you don't necessarily have to make a choice between going to school and being an entrepreneur. For example, I'm 19 years old. I'm going to school full time, but I'm also I run a couple different online businesses through that. And I sort of had this idea in my head of, before coming to school, I had to choose, okay, do I want to go to school, get a full-time job, all that jazz, or become an entrepreneur? And as I progressed through school, I realized I could do both. Because even if you don't think you do, you have so much time as a student, okay? I have so much free time. And if you look at how you're actually, and I mean how you're actually spending your time, there is so much time available for you to work on whatever project you're interested in. And you don't have to choose. And then once you get, like you said, once you get to that point where it's bringing in a serious income for you, then you might have to make a choice. But until then, you don't have to stress out. You don't have to think, oh, just because I'm in school, I can't work on this. Or, oh, if I want to work on this, I need to drop out right now. If you have nothing, if you haven't done anything yet, what makes you think dropping out and starting a business will be a good thing for you? It's so important to realize how much time you actually have and look at what you're actually doing with it. So I think it's really valuable that you brought that up.
Yeah, definitely, man. there's a lot of opportunity if you'll just get past the point of thinking that like, drinking and partying is the way to go in college. You can really put in a lot of work and build something that's really special for yourself if you're willing to put in the work.
Absolutely. And I mean, everything in moderation too. Like you got to have fun, you got to enjoy your life, but
Yeah.
also focus on the things that are important and the things that you value and that will bring you towards the places where you're looking to get. I think that's really, really big. And can you talk a little bit about, you said through this Amazon business, you started bringing on additional team members and building out that sort of base. In your business ventures, what has building out your teams looked like? Have you started most things on your own, or have you started most things with other people? And how did that progress?
Yeah, man. So as far as the Amazon business goes, I had two older guys that I went to high school with, and they kind of like stayed back in their hometown. And then I went off to college. They were in college at like Ohio State, and I was in Kentucky. And then so they were the ones that introduced me to that Amazon business. So I was kind of running like my own wing in college. So I was partners with two others, and then I built a team, and like after the semester ended, and the shoe business started getting more complex and competitive. They went into like they started creating their own like baby lines and like like a lot. They like really scaled like a lot with their clothing lines and stuff. Like I went to go check out their warehouse a few months ago, and it's ridiculous. They had like hundreds of thousands of dollars of inventory, and so they really scaled. But I kind of pivoted into the Patagonia era with my business, and they also weren't in school. Like they stopped going to school after they did that. And I think they just recently sold their store. But yeah, so I was running my own gig towards the end of our relationship. And as far as like the shoes, towards the end of the shoes, I hired people that were on commission. And then some people I paid like hourly. I paid like $10 an hour. I paid the person on commission that was promoting on campus, like family and friends, and to students, which I talked about increased our margins and stuff. And then I just paid people to go get the shoes. I paid them by the number of shoes they got. And then I paid people by the number of packages that they shipped out. So everything was pretty much on commission.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good way to go, because if you don't know how hard somebody's going to work for you, you don't want to be paying them that fixed rate for them to not deliver on that. So that's also a good incentive to actually make people work harder.
Yeah.
Last semester, I had a job on campus where I was there was this startup app that I was working for, and I got paid on commission for each download that I got for the app. So that definitely got me to hustle a lot harder and make a good bit of money working for them. So definitely vouch for the college student that really gets after commissions. So
yeah, dude, I think anytime you're investing money in yourself or your business, you got to think about like what's the ROI of that investment. And you can really gauge the ROI if you're giving them commission. And especially even with hourly, you can gauge that as well. But if you're just paying them, like a salary or whatever, like it's a little bit harder to gauge that, especially when you're getting started. It's good to put people on commission, keep your expenses low, and to make sure that they're actually providing more value than you are paying them.
Precisely. You got to see where their incentives are at and make sure that's aligned with what you are looking to get out of them. So completely agree with that. You mentioned your father earlier as somebody who had gone out and done some entrepreneurial stuff. Was he somebody that was particularly influential on you, or did you have any mentors as you were starting these businesses? You mentioned those two older guys over in Ohio that sort of helped you get this Amazon thing started. But other than that, were there any mentors that had a big impact on you?
Yeah, man, I definitely had a good amount of mentors. My dad was definitely a big one when he was working his job pretty much up until I was age 5. And then he was like doing well in his industry, which was natural gas. And one day a lady called him. I guess he had worked with this lady prior to that. She was like, "Hey, do you want to start a business?" And he was like, "Yep." And he moved us to Columbus, Ohio, and that's where he started his business. And he ran that for 17 years, and they just sold it a few years ago.
Wow.
But he was a big mentor. I mean, I saw him work a lot, especially like around when I was 7. So we moved there when I was 5, and then my parents got divorced at 7. And he was like just, in the early stages of his business. So I watched him pretty much set aside everything and really scale back on his expenses. Like he lived in like a small 1-bedroom apartment. Like we
Wow.
would go over there, sleep on like the couch, and like, so he like, yeah, dude, he put in the work. He was a big mentor to me. Definitely taught me a lot of just ethical skills. Like I was talking to him, he has a place in Tampa now, and I went to like go visit him the other day, and I was like, what is the number one thing that you think is the reason for why you're where you're at?
Mhm.
And he pretty much just said because he was always ethical in doing business. He was
Mm.
always honest. He would never burn bridges. So that was like, I've never really heard that answer from anyone.
Yeah.
Usually they'll say like a hard work, a
Yep.
dedication, like all that. But like, yeah, he put that first for sure. And just like, that being like a real person that's honest and has integrity will get you a long way if you consistently do that throughout your whole career. So he
Absolutely.
was definitely a big mentor. My mom also started businesses. I learned a lot from her. Both my parents were entrepreneurial. And then as far as like in the wealth management sector, I did have a few mentors there. I like one of the people that I interned for in the private bank and with Fifth Third, it was a big mentor for me. I would go into his office like every few weeks, and he would just like teach me, just talk to me about his client relationships, and I'd ask him questions about like asset allocation and just economics, like what he thought was going on with the market. So he was a big one. And then yeah, man, I didn't start getting into like social media until like I just got Instagram like 12 months ago.
Really?
And yeah, because I always like just hated on social media for some reason. And then I realized like I hear Gary Vee talk about personal branding is like so important. And
Yep.
I read like Crush It and all that. And I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm going for it. So right when I started getting into social media, I started getting like more mentors through that.
Hmm.
And like I think that you can learn from everyone, whether it's what to do or if it's what not to do. I try to learn from everyone, and I would say my three biggest mentors that are on social media that
Hmm.
I have or haven't talked to. I've talked to Grant Cardone a little bit.
Mm.
Haven't talked to Gary Vee yet. And another one that I really, really like that's probably had the biggest impact on my life is Lewis Mocker. Um,
Interesting.
he's yeah, he's definitely a lot smaller than like Gary and
Yeah.
Cardone. I think he has like at this time he has like 44,000 followers on Instagram and
Hmm.
a few thousand subs on YouTube. But yeah, dude, he provides so much value, and I've learned a lot from him. I would like Snapchat him. I've been Snapchatting him for like the last 3 years, and I'll ask him a question. He'll like send me like 10 snaps back and like answer them. So he's
Wow.
like he's really cool, dude. He's from Australia. I don't know if I mentioned that, but he's had a huge impact, and he's all like finance and like investing related. So yeah, he's probably been one of the biggest mentors.
That's huge. I'll have to link him up and check him out because I've
Yeah,
never heard of this guy before. So I'm
yeah,
definitely interested to see more about him.
yeah, man.
So, Jeff, what is something that people wouldn't know about you by looking at your Instagram feed? You said you'd only been doing it for a year, but what is something that an interesting fact about you or something that you're interested in that people wouldn't know about just based on scrolling through your feed?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing is that I don't really post about is fitness. Like I'm
Mm.
really into fitness. Like I work out almost every single day, and I train a lot with weights. And that's always been something I've been like really passionate about because I think that it's really more of like a mind exercise when you can train your mind to push your body past certain points, then you can pretty much do anything. Like I think it really relates to like work as well. Like if you can get your mindset to the point where you can push yourself just a little bit further every day, that's what I try to do is push myself 1% more every day. That compounds over time. I'm sure you know about
Yeah.
compound interest. Made me think about the compound effect. I don't know if you've read that book,
Not yet.
but yeah, it's a great book. That's a main thing. I actually used to have a fitness account, and then I was
Really?
like, you know what, I gotta focus on my one real like brand, which is finance and business. So yeah, that's one thing. I'm also really into motorcycles. I have a KTM 450. I've been riding dirt bikes since I was little, and and then I also have a Ninja 1000, which is like a street bike. So I'm
Yeah,
really
I
into
noticed you had a couple.
motorcycles and weightlifting. Pretty much anything that gives you an adrenaline rush, skydiving, whatever. I'm all about.
Have you been skydiving?
Yeah, man. When I was in Australia, I took a trip over to Bali, Indonesia,
Wow.
and then we went to the Great Barrier Reef, which is just like northern Australia, and we went skydiving out there around the Great Barrier Reef. It was pretty insane.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
wild. That's really wild.
yeah.
When did your interest with fitness start off?
At a really young age. So what? Okay. So I'm like a younger sibling. I have two older sisters,
Okay.
and always I have felt like I kind of got picked on a little bit in like middle school and stuff, and I always felt like I had to protect like my family
Mm.
because I was mostly living with like my mom and sisters because my dad was like running that business and stuff, and I always felt like I was like the small. Like I wrestled like they tried to get me to wrestle 103 in high school.
Mhm.
If that tells you how like small I was. So I started lifting in like eighth grade, and I started like just consistently doing it. I mean, it was really hard at first. I remember just being so sore,
Yeah.
and I just stuck with it. Stuck with it. Sophomore year, I started getting like pretty big. I think I got up to like 160
Wow.
by my sophomore year, and then I was like, you know what, let's play football because I'm like actually big enough now, and I don't want to wrestle. So I started playing football, and I learned a lot more about like proper form because we had a weight training coach that was
Wow.
like pretty good, and I learned a lot about lifting there. And then I've just continued since then. So really, I started in eighth grade, and I've been chugging along. So how old would I have been? I would have been like 15, and so it's been 10 years.
That's wild. That's wild. So
Yeah.
you said you saw some aspects of fitness translate into business with like the willpower side of things. Are there any other parallels that you see or assets that you gained by focusing on fitness that translated into assets for you in your business and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, definitely. Working out has always like helped me be more calm because like that's also it gets me away from everything. Like I just listen to music. I love going to lift by myself.
Hmm.
I've been lifting with my business partner a little bit recently in the past few months, but I still love going lifting by myself because I just stop thinking about everything. I just vibe to music and I'm just in my own zone.
Hmm.
And it also just helps like I said, clear your mind, which lowers stress and anxiety. And then if you do it correctly and you're eating correctly, it increases your energy levels.
Yep.
So that's huge. And I've been kind of doing that where I do like go in the morning and do cardio, and then I'll work until about like 7 or 8, take a break and go lift, and then I'll come back, shower, and work a little bit longer, and then just repeat the process. So yeah, energy, like just your mental state is huge, and then yeah, just pushing limits with things is awesome. And when you see growth, like when you can really measure growth, I think that's so important. And like with fitness, you can really measure, you know, not only your weight, your muscle mass, your fat, how much reps you're doing, how much weight you're doing. So it's a great way to measure personal growth. And that's been something that I've always strived to do is have more personal growth.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good when you can put that number on things because what gets measured gets managed. Is that the saying? Something like
Yeah,
that. So,
exactly.
so if you can put a number to that, it's very motivating, especially for me. I know for a lot of people as well that it is motivating when you can see the numbers go up and see your progress. It's a lot easier than when you have to wait months and months to actually see some results, like if you're starting a business or something like that. So I can see how that
Yeah.
would be a good way for you to stay motivated. Now, what I want to dive into is more on the credit side of things. So earlier in the show, you mentioned that you are pretty into credit, both on the personal and business side of things. And one of the things that I've noticed, both from your Instagram feed and just what you tend to talk about a lot, is being able to use credit in order to travel either for free at a discounted rate. So can you first just walk us through kind of how the credit card system works and how you have been able to use it to gain some free travel?
Yeah, so I don't know, like we could probably go really deep into
We
this, but
could.
maybe I'll just start out with like FICO,
Sure. Yeah. Go for it.
which is, just like the personal measurement for credit in the US.
Mhm.
There's really five categories to it, and the biggest ones are like payment history, which is 35% of your score,
Yep.
utilization, the average age of your accounts, and then hard inquiries and total accounts.
Yep.
So there's five different sections to credit that you need to be aware of. And there are hacks to help with those. A good, just to give you more context, the scores range anywhere from like 300 to 850. And you should be shooting, once you get over like 700 to 720,
Mhm.
that's when you can really start getting good cards. Once you're over like 740, you can really start getting the higher end travel cards, which, everyone strives to get because you get all the cool like airport lounges, you get a lot higher bonuses, a lot higher rewards. So yeah, that's kind of a little overview of FICO. Do you want me to talk about like some of the hacks with that, or do you want me to touch more on the scoring model, or how do you want to?
So we had the guys on Self Lender come on a couple weeks ago, and they talked about sort of how the scoring works. So I want to
Oh,
focus more on maybe what were some of the first cards that you got? When did you first start getting into credit cards?
yeah. So I really didn't start. I got added as an authorized user, which really helped
Yeah.
like the average age of my accounts and my payment history and all of that.
Could you go
So
over what
that,
that means really quick?
what would you say?
Could you go over what that means to be an authorized user really quick, just for our listeners that aren't familiar?
Yeah, so this little hack that's been around for like 30 years now, and what you do is you have like a family or friend add you as an authorized user onto their account. So that gives you adopt the full history of that credit account that they add you to. So
Mhm.
that affects your utilization, which is like the amount of debt you're using, affects your payment history, you assuming that they make good payments,
Yep.
on-time payments with their accounts, and then it affects the average age of your accounts, and it adds another total account to that category as well. So um, what that does is you just adopt the full history on that credit account, and it doesn't negatively impact whoever's adding you as an authorized user. It literally just helps you, and they don't even have to give you like the credit card.
Yeah.
And so it helps with four categories, four of the factors within credit, which makes up like 90% of your score. The only thing it doesn't
Exactly.
really help with is hard inquiries.
But I mean, you're getting a new line without having to do a hard inquiry. So you could even
Exactly.
make a case for it there.
Yeah. So I guess it does work for all five factors there. Um, as far as so yeah, if you don't have like someone to add you as an authorized user, you can buy trade lines,
Mhm.
which is these companies just have these accounts where they'll add you as an authorized user for a fee. It's the same thing as the authorized user hack, but you're just buying your way into it.
Mhm.
One thing that I've seen you talk a little bit about, and a lot of people are talking about now, is that like whole concept of buying a good credit score and trade lines. And one thing to know with trade lines is that the more that you add and the more authorized user accounts that you add, the less of an impact it's going to have on your
Mhm.
score. So you really need to be building like your primary accounts, but it's a great way to like bump your score up quickly and to start building credit. Pretty much like where I started was I started with I think I started with Fifth Third first, and then I went into Chase and I got like the Freedom and Freedom Unlimited,
Yep.
and then I moved into like the Sapphire and the City Prestige and like Amex cards. So I started out real low level. I didn't have to get a secured card to start, which is what a lot of people do to build credit. So I was lucky because I got added as an authorized user on an
Yeah.
account that had 15 years of
Wow.
on-time payment history. So that really
That's
helped me.
that's huge.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah. And then after I was still stuck of, like between like the 5 and 10 year range on like the average age of my accounts. So I added a trade line that has like 43 years of positive history, and that really helped there.
43 years. My God. That's
Yeah.
wild. That's really wild. So just to give our audience a little reference point, about how many credit cards do you have at this current moment?
Yeah.
Like,
So I have 19.
wow.
You need to have 21 total accounts. on your, and I also have like, like an auto loan.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing with credit is you need to have 21 total accounts to get a perfect score.
Yep.
But you also want a good diversity of accounts. So you don't just want all credit cards. You want to have like, if you have a mortgage, that'll help you out. If you have an auto loan, if you have personal loans, if you have credit cards, you want like a good combination of things. So I have like personal lines of credit with banks, and then I have, my credit cards and then my auto loan. So that's pretty much my diversity of things there.
Are you shooting for a perfect score right now? Like, is your goal to get an 850, or is it more to just get the experiences that you can get from having good credit?
Yeah, man. So I don't really understand why people go for the perfect 850 when you get, unless you just OCD about it. But like, honestly, once you're over 800, they're pretty much looking at you the same. You're not going to get much lower of an interest rate. And I don't need to like go to bars and like tell girls that I have a perfect 850. Actually, when I was getting my car, when I got my new car, the sales lady was like, "Wow, you have a really good credit score." I think it was like 780 at the time or whatever. And I actually started dating her for a little bit, so maybe that helped there. I don't know, but
Pro tip: use your credit score to get the ladies, guys.
Yeah, exactly. But so yeah, dude, I don't shoot for a perfect. I just try to stay around 800, and what I'm doing, because my score varies like a lot because I leverage it both like with my business credit and my personal credit, because like I leverage 0% interest for 12 to 18 months. And so like my utilization makes up 30% of your score. So when I'm utilizing my credit, my score will drop and then I just pay it off and it goes back up. So I use credit to scale, and then I use credit to travel.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought about that, using like the intro APRs in order to scale your business and to get some essentially free borrowing for a certain specified amount of time. So that's very interesting concept. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of your coolest experiences that you have had by utilizing credit to travel?
Yeah. So once you get up, like, okay, so like last week, I think it was actually 2 weeks ago, we went to Tampa. We stayed at 3 different resorts. And we flew there. So we flew there and back. I sat first class too on the way there. I didn't get the ticket on the way back, but I only used 16,000 points.
Wow.
And to fly there and back. And like we booked another trip to Bali, Indonesia, and we're paying 46,000 points there and back for that. And then we're also going to, we just booked Cabo last night, which is like right after the new year. And we're going there for 40,600 points.
Jeez. Do you just have like a huge stockpile of points?
Yeah. So some tips about travel, first of all. There's something called hidden city ticketing, which I use. I actually went to Atlanta for a conference like a few months ago. And what I did was I booked my flight to Tampa, and then the event was in Atlanta. So I would just get off at the layover in Atlanta. And then I saved literally 60% on it. So that's a big hack. It works about like 30% of the time, honestly. But that's something that I use for short trips. One thing you have to know with that is you don't want to do that and check a bag, because your bag, you know where your bag's going. So yeah, that's what I do for short trips, like little week trips. I'll just bring a carry-on and just get off there, and then just book my flight home as well. I just check, with a few different travel agencies. And then also there's airfares. So like these airlines will misprice flights. And also, or they just have like a bunch of seats left over, and they'll just drop the price because they need to sell tickets. And there's certain like sites that I use just to like monitor that stuff, and I'll get like emails, so you can put in like your preference of where you want to go, and they'll just like shoot you an email when it drops.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have any examples of those for our listeners?
Yeah. So Airfare Watchdog is a good one. I'm using Scott's Cheap Flights.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah. And then Next Vacay. There's a lot if you just do your research. Honestly, like one of the best ones that I use is Skyscanner.
Hmm.
Not sure if you've used that, but like
No.
it doesn't update you, but it's an app that you just get on your phone.
Oh,
Dude, like they like literally 90% of the time they have the cheapest flights.
wow. Okay.
So I
I'll be
use
sure to
that a
check out
lot.
all these resources in the show notes as well for you guys, and definitely feel free to look up some more as well.
Cool, cool. Yeah, and then the last like real hack with travel. So those two weren't even like with credit at all.
Yeah, no, those are just travel. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it like once you get those flights for cheap, I just leverage my points to pay for those flights.
Mhm.
And depending on how you transfer your points or use your points, you usually only pay like taxes. So I literally pay under like $25 for almost every single flight I take.
Wow.
And sometimes it's completely free, like I said, depending on the way you use the points. But one of the methods there's a few. I'll just touch on like two of them.
Mhm.
The main one is award stacking. So this is just taking advantage of those big bonuses that you get with credit cards. And I always shoot. Yeah, I always shoot for the 50 to 100K. I just got my roommate actually. He got the Hilton Honors card the other like literally 3 days ago, and
Wow.
he got a 125K bonus on that.
Wow.
So he can, and you can transfer those points as well. But that's something else we can talk about. So yeah, award stacking. You can get credit cards every 2 to 3 months
Mhm.
because of like there's certain when you're applying for credit, you need to have less than hard inquiries in the last 6 months. So you apply for these cards every 2 to 3 months. You meet the spending requirements of them. If you can't, you can leverage almost all your expenses, your rent, your utilities,
Yep.
your food, everything that through that card. And it's usually the expenses are usually like to meet that spend requirement. It's only like $2,000 usually.
Mhm.
And then you secure those points, and then you just leverage those points to travel, and you can use them with hotels or airlines. And I just do that literally every 2 months, and I keep my hard inquiries down. I get anywhere from 50 to 100, and you can get up to 150K bonuses.
Wow.
And I just meet the spend requirements, and then I just get those points and just leverage them.
Yeah, I mean those sign-up bonuses are definitely where it's at as far as credit card rewards go. And for those of you that aren't familiar, basically what that looks like is if you spend like a certain amount, like in that case you said 2,000, if you spend $2,000 in the first 3 months on this card, they're going to give you a big fat stack of points in if you can do it in the first 3 months to sort of reward you for that initial spending. And in my experience, that's mostly because they're trying to get you in the habit of using this card. That's sort of what their sort of incentive is behind these sign-up bonuses. Do you have any better sort of like rationale behind why these are offered?
Yeah, dude. As far as like banks and finance institutions, credit cards are by far like their biggest margin.
Yeah.
If they're hoping that you spend a lot on your credit card and you pay the heavy interest on it, and you just you spend a ton of money in interest, which you will, because like if you max out a $10,000 credit
Oh
card,
my God.
you're going to be paying on that for over 20, 25 years, and you're going to be paying over 50K in interest,
Oh,
which is
that
ridiculous.
hurts.
So you're going to be paying over 60K to pay that $10,000 credit card back. And while that's what they hope you do,
Yeah.
honestly, they hope that you just make the minimum payment and you pay the high interest, because that's what the masses do.
Yep.
That's obviously not what I do and what any
No.
intelligent person should do. But yeah, that's. I mean, they really want to keep you as a client, and they'll do pretty much whatever it takes, whether that's like waiving the annual fee or there's like hacks around that as well. But yeah, that's a big moneymaker for these banks.
Yeah. And just guys, make sure you're using your credit cards responsibly. Again, there's a lot of benefits you can get from them, but if you're not using them responsibly, if you're paying thousands and thousands of interest every single year, it's probably not going to add up, and you're probably going to be losing out in the long term. Even if you are getting some free flights here and there, paying all that money in interest it's not going to be worth it for you in the long term. So
Yeah,
I think that's really
definitely.
important to hit on.
Yeah, I have like a little credit course, and like I made the first module to all about debt and like how to manage debt and how to pay 0% interest and like how to not get taken advantage of, because like while there's so many rewards with credit cards, you can really dig yourself into a deep hole
Yeah.
if you don't do it correctly. So that is by far the most important aspect to this is like, don't spend money that you don't have. And if you're paying high interest, there's definitely ways around it. You just have to do your research.
Completely agree. And if you guys can't handle credit cards, I've got a great guy for you. His name's Dave Ramsey. Turn off this podcast right now and go start watching some Dave Ramsey videos because he'll whip you into shape if you're having some issues with debt. So
100%.
I've got some questions here that I like to ask all of my guests. They're short questions, don't have to be short answers. So let's just hop right in. The first one is, what are you excited about right now? Now, this can be some kind of global trend that's emerging, something in your business, something in credit card rewards, just one thing in the sort of global sphere that you're excited about right now.
Man, I'm really excited about a lot of things. Like with our business, we're scaling a lot. We're going to different niches. With credit, like my consulting's picking up a lot, and I've been able to help so many people. I get messages like every day about people saving hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month and like traveling for free. So that's really cool. Really excited for that. I think a very like cool trend, which I don't really want to talk a ton about, but I think a very interesting thing is cryptocurrency.
Ooh.
I actually bought my first like Bitcoin in 2012.
Really?
Yeah, but I didn't hold on to it. So I actually was buying a lot of them. Like I bought them I bought them for $7.20.
Wow.
And I bought, probably anywhere from 50 to 100 of them.
Jeez.
So I would be mega wealthy if I held on to those.
I mean, hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't even think about that anymore. But yeah, I've been trading crypto a little bit the past few years, and I just really think the applications are very interesting. And I think it's hilarious just seeing all the people that like talk about it. Everyone's like an expert in Bitcoin and crypto.
Yeah.
And, it gets a little ridiculous, but it's so interesting because this is a new asset. Like this is a completely new asset class, which really we haven't seen in a very long time. Stocks have been around for hundreds of years. Bonds have been around for a long time. Commodities have been around since human existence. So I think crypto is very interesting, and I'm very interested to see what's going to happen here in the next few years.
Totally with you on that. The next one is, what habits have really served you most throughout your time as an entrepreneur or just throughout your life? I know you said fitness was really big for you. Are any other ones that really come to mind?
Man, so a year ago, really actually only like 10 months ago, I completely changed all of my habits.
Really?
I like in college, I developed just some bad habits, just like eating. I was drinking and occasionally using tobacco and stuff. And I read a book called The Power of Habit.
Yep.
And that really helped me to get started on creating better habits. So I've cut out sugar, I've cut out alcohol, I've cut out tobacco, I've cut out pretty much anything that's unhealthy in my life and replaced them with productive things and progressive things that actually improve my life and better my chances of living my mission for a longer period of time. So that's been a big thing. If you are looking to change your habits, I actually had a few people ask me about this yesterday because I always talk about change on like my Instagram, and I have people reach out about it all the time. And I read that book, and a good thing to do is to stick with your change for 70 to 80 days. I always recommend like 3 months because that's how long it takes to develop a new habit. It's anywhere between like 60 to 75 days is what the research shows. And you have to do it consistently every day. So if you're creating a new habit, it's going to suck for a little bit, but stick with it for a few months, at least 2 to 3 months. And it gets a lot easier after that.
Absolutely. Completely agree. And so many people get in this like short-term thinking of, I'm going to go on this diet for a month, and then they're just going to fall right back into where they were before. So it's important to keep in mind, you're going to be around for a while, and you want to be developing long-term habits and things that you're going to be able to maintain for the long term, because it's not just like a short-term game. It's not just like, okay, if I lose 5 pounds this month, that's great. But like, if you go back to where you were at before, then what was the point? So that's my 2 cents on that. What do you do in your business or just in your life that doesn't scale? So for example, I know me personally, I send a lot of DMs, video DMs to my to just random followers. I'll pick like 10 people a day and just say, hey, what's up? But do you do anything in your business that isn't particularly scalable?
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned like that whole video message thing, because that's actually we have like 3 methods to prospecting our clients as far as like the digital marketing side of things go.
Sure.
And one of the main ones is sending those video DMs. And we do that through like, mostly through Facebook Messenger. And so that's not really scalable, but we've created some scale to that by hiring those employees that we just hired. So we got them prospecting for us, and they're using our methods. Another thing that's not really scalable is my consulting. So I do one-on-one consulting for businesses and just personal credit. And that I help businesses like set up LLCs correctly and get established and build credit correctly. And that's one thing that doesn't scale, but the rewards are definitely there for me and for the client. So it's definitely something I'll continue for sure. But yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest thing that doesn't scale.
Completely agree. And it's huge to make time for these things that don't particularly scale, but have a huge impact. So I think that's really impactful that you have some of these things going on. Last thing is just, where can people find out more about you, what you're up to, and learn some more stuff about credit from you?
Today I'm really like just launching my YouTube channel.
Ooh.
So I'm going to be talking, a lot about finance and really just starting out with credit
Nice.
Because that's like really what I specialize at the time of this recording. And but really, honestly, like how you found me is Instagram. Like I'm always on Instagram. I'm always answering questions. I try to post consistently every day, and I definitely do on my stories. I drop a ton of value on my stories.
Yep.
I have dozens of stories saved as highlights. I'm sure you know what highlights are.
Yep.
They're just below like the bio in someone's profile. And I just try to provide as much value. I think I have right now, I think I have like 12 or 13 that are on credit right now.
Wow.
And that's probably the best place to find me is Instagram. So at Jeff Sekinger, it's JeffSekinger.
Awesome. And we should link that up in the show notes as well. Jeff, any closing thoughts you have for our listeners today?
No, man, I really like that you brought up that one thing about credit cards. Like, just don't spend money that you don't have. While you can do so many cool things with credit cards, you need to not spend money that you don't have, because you can dig yourself into a hole. And if you're going for it entrepreneurial, just realize that you got to stick to it, and it takes time. Like, patience is really a virtue, and you really need to have that long-term perspective and get away from the short-term thinking. So that's the biggest recommendation I would give to your audience.
Absolutely. Be responsible out there, kids. Thanks for talking today, Jeff.
Thanks, bro.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Young Smart Money. If you want to support the show, you can do so in 3 different ways. You can subscribe, you can leave me 5, and you can share this episode with a friend. To subscribe, all you got to do is click the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts. To leave me 5, all you got to do is scroll all the way down to the bottom of the podcast page for Young Smart Money and click on the Write a Review button. And to share with a friend, all you got to do is screenshot yourself listening to this episode, post on your Instagram story, tag me, and I will be sure to repost it in my Instagram story as well. I love giving you guys some attention who are listening to the show. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.